Then we got the radiation. And then they claim they went around and up through the outer band. Well, guess what? When you go up to the poles, it's even more concentrated there. So they're trying to say they escaped it by going around.
Holy mackerel. What's happened?
It's just the northern lights. Aurora borealis. High-energy protons spilling over into our atmosphere. They get through the magnetic shield where it's weak, at the poles.
Oh, it's still beautiful. I don't care what you call it. How often does this happen?
Oh, any old time. Although it's best when the sun's active. That gets the solar wind up, and that's where the protons come from.
You say the darndest things, Marina.
It was up to NASA to build a spacecraft with a strong radiation barrier and figure out a flight trajectory that avoided the thickest, most radioactive parts of the belt while traveling as fast as possible. Scientists determined that if the speed of the Apollo spacecraft was about 25,000 kilometers per hour, it would take about 52.8 minutes to pass through the belts. Based on that information, they found that the radiation dose received during that amount of time would be, at most, 11.4 rads, and that's without the protection of a spacecraft. And since a lethal radiation dose for a human is 300 rads in 1 hour, NASA deemed the missions a go. In the end, the average radiation dose on the skin of the Apollo astronauts came out to be 0.38 rad, which is about the same radiation you would receive getting 2 CT scans on your head. So while the Van Allen belts are lethal, they could really only kill an astronaut if they were to spend several days in their radioactive vicinity. And despite the challenges the belts create when leaving Earth, we should actually be thanking them for protecting life on our planet from utter annihilation.
Well, guess what? When you go up to the poles, it's even more concentrated there. So they're trying to say they escaped it by going around. That takes longer to do that, and you're in a higher density. That takes longer to do that, and you're in a higher density when you're approaching that to go up through. Like any of the shots they show, they're in the second band even longer than if they went straight out through it. And both are ridiculous to think that they could travel through that without the type of protection that you would need. course, the windows would have to be closed off and quite a bit of protection over them as well. Quite a bit of protection over them as well. That's not apparent. I mean, they can claim they protected the rest of it, but there are the windows.
Yeah, got the windows.
That's not apparent. I mean, they can claim they protected the rest of it, but there are the windows.
Yeah, got the windows. And also, if you're launching from Florida on the east coast of America, you can't go on a polar orbit. And also, if you're launching from Florida on the east coast of America, you can't go on a polar orbit. It's not possible. You can't just turn left halfway across the Atlantic and go through the poles. It doesn't work that way. You can't just turn left halfway across the Atlantic and go through the poles. You can't just turn left halfway across the Atlantic and go through the poles. It doesn't work that way.
No, they're using the rotation of the Earth to achieve orbit.
Yeah, they were being catapulted at 1,000 miles an hour, the speed the Earth orbits or rotates at. It would help them to do it, but they were going across Africa. That's nowhere near the poles.
Yes, and that's mentioned that you're going right over the eye there, right?
Yeah, the reset structure, and that's in Mauritania. Mauritania's in Africa. It's nowhere near the poles. You can go to the poles, but you launch from the west coast of America, from Vandenberg Air Force Base. That's how you do the polar orbits. That's how spy satellites go into polar orbits, so they can have the Earth rotate underneath them and they photograph whatever they want to. But if you're going to launch from Florida, you're going to go across to Africa. Come on, guys, the poles are nowhere near Africa. The equator is.
Well, once they get to space, everything changes. They can change direction. They can accelerate, decelerate, anything they want up there. They just have that magical formula that is capable of doing that, and they can do it all with just a couple little thrusters. They don't need to use a lot of fuel.
No, they don't. No. And of course, it's all fiction.
Yeah. Well, it's like Woody Woodpecker said, coming back from the moon, it's downhill all the way.
Yep.